In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. At the Archive of Silence Part 1, The Glass Key Chapter 1, The Man in the Gray Cardigan. When people think of my father, Arthur Penelagon, they visualize a man who was as exciting as a blank sheet of paper. He was a creature of absolute, rhythmic consistency. For 42 years, he worked as a low-level clerk in the city's water department. His life was defined by predictable routes, home to office, office to home, and a weekly trip to the grocery store every Saturday at exactly 9 a.m. He wore the same charcoal gray cardigan every Sunday, never raised his voice, and seemed to inhabit the very shadows of his own habits. When he passed away 2 weeks ago, he left behind a modest suburban house, a collection of vintage fountain pens, and a funeral attended by exactly 12 people. My sister, Claire, and I spent the first few days in a daze of boredom and mild grief, sorting through his unremarkable belongings. It was a tedious process. Old utility bills filed alphabetically, photos of botanical gardens he never seemed to visit, and stacks of newspapers tied with twine. He was just so consistent, Claire said, holding up a stack of neatly filed electricity receipts from 1984. No secrets, no surprises. Just 40 years of paperwork and silence. How does a man live a whole life and leave behind nothing but a trail of receipts? But on the 5th day, while I was clearing out the crawl space under the stairs, I found something that shattered the narrative of Arthur the clerk. Tucked behind a loose brick in the foundation was a small, heavy box made of dark mahogany. It didn't have a traditional lock. Instead, the top of the lid featured a circular indentation with perfectly smooth, beveled edges. I suddenly remembered the glass paperweight Arthur always kept on his desk, a strange, hand-blown sphere with a swirl of amber light trapped inside. I grabbed it, pressed it into the indentation, and heard a soft, heavy mechanical click. The box didn't just open. It unfolded like an intricate piece of high-tech origami, revealing a single silver key and a hand-drawn map of a lighthouse on the coast of Maine, a place our father had never once mentioned. Chapter 2. The Sentinel of Storms reached 2 days later. Claire and I were driving north. The air shifted from the humid weight of the suburbs to the sharp, salt-crusted tang of the Atlantic. The map led us to Storms Reach, a lighthouse that had been officially decommissioned in the late 1960s. It stood on a jagged finger of rock, looking like a lonely iron sentinel guarding a forgotten world. Why would Dad have a key to a lighthouse in Maine? Claire asked, her voice trembling as the wind whipped around our car. He hated the ocean. He said water was statistically unpredictable. The silver key fit the heavy iron door at the base of the tower perfectly. As the door creaked open, we weren't met with the smell of rot or sea salt. The interior was pristine, climate-controlled, and eerily modern. The circular walls were lined with thousands of journals in black leather bindings, and the air hummed with the sound of hidden servers. This wasn't a lighthouse. It was a private archive equipped with technology that looked years ahead of its time. In the center of the room sat a massive oak table covered in blueprints. I walked over and looked at the nearest one. My heart stopped. It was a schematic for a high-security vault in the Swiss Alps, dated 1995, at the bottom. In my father's unmistakable, elegant script was a signature, Arthur Penelagon, lead security architect, The man who spent 40 years filing water bills was actually one of the world's most sought-after designers of high-security structures. He hadn't been a clerk. He had been a ghost, a man who built the vaults, bunkers, and sanctuaries where the world's most powerful people hid their darkest secrets. Every day at the water department had been a masterful cover story for a night spent designing fortresses for the global elite. Chapter 3. The Sovereign Fund. We spent the next few hours pulling journals from the shelves. They weren't diaries. They were case files. Every entry detailed a project, private banks, government black sites, offshore bunkers. My father hadn't just built them. He had audited them. He was the failsafe, the man hired to find the flaws in the most secure places on Earth. "Maya, look at this," Claire whispered, pulling out a folder labeled The Sovereign Fund Minus 2005. Inside were surveillance photos of a man we recognized instantly, Senator Silas Vane, the current frontrunner for the presidency. The file contained evidence that the senator hadn't just stored money in the vault my father built. He had stored something far more lethal. There were transcripts of illegal arms deals, photos of classified documents, and a list of names that made my blood run cold. My father wasn't just an architect. He was a collector of leverage. He built the cages, and then he watched exactly what the animals put inside them. He knew that in his world, knowledge was the only currency that could guarantee our safety. Until now. Suddenly, a red light began to pulse on the wall near the door. A screen on the desk flickered to life, and a pre-recorded video of our father appeared. He looked younger, sharper, wearing a tailored suit I had never seen before. "Maya, Claire," the recording began, his voice lacking its usual suburban softness. "If you are seeing this, it means you found the key. I spent my life being invisible so that you could grow up in the light. But the world I built is starting to crumble. Silas Vane has discovered this archive. He is closing the circles. You aren't just my daughters anymore. You are the keepers of the archive. And the people mentioned in these files will do anything to make sure this lighthouse burns with you inside." Chapter 4. The price of the truth. The recording cut to black, and the sound of a distant, high-performance engine echoed through the thick stone walls. I looked out the narrow window of the lighthouse. A black SUV was winding its way down the narrow coastal road, moving fast. They weren't here to negotiate. "They're here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Who?" Claire asked, her eyes wide with panic. "The people Dad spent 40 years watching," I replied. "He didn't leave us a house, Claire. He left us a war. He wanted us to have the truth, but he forgot to tell us how to survive it." I looked at the silver key in my hand. It was no longer a curious family mystery. It was a target on our backs. My father had spent his life pretending to be a nobody to protect us from the monsters he built for. Now, those monsters were at our door, and the only thing standing between them and the secrets in this room were two sisters who barely knew how to read a blueprint. I grabbed the Sovereign Fund file and shoved it into my bag. We can't stay. There has to be another way out. Dad wouldn't build a place like this without an escape hatch. We began frantically scanning the floor. Under the massive desk, I found another circular indentation. I pressed the glass paperweight into it, and a section of the floor slid away silently, revealing a narrow spiral staircase leading down toward the jagged rocks where the waves crashed below. We scrambled down the stairs just as we heard the heavy iron door upstairs being breached with an explosive charge. Behind us, the lighthouse suddenly erupted not with fire, but with a blinding white light. It was a data purge system. Arthur wasn't going to let his secrets be stolen without a fight. As we jumped into a small, high-powered boat hidden in a sea cave beneath the tower, I looked at the maps in my bag. We had to get to the second location, the place he called the last sanctuary. The gray cardigan and the quiet Sunday dinners were gone. My father was a stranger, and as I throttled the engine into the storm, I realized I was becoming a stranger to myself too. I was a Penelagon, and it was time to see if the archive had taught me how to survive.